Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dear student and all viewers, welcome to my channel English Literature and Linguistics, a channel for literature lovers. In the current video, we are going to see if any foolproof definition of literature is possible, or more precisely, a definition that can distinguish between what is literature and what is not literature. What is literature and what is not literature. So what is literature? Before defining literature, we see what is the function of literature. And for this purpose, we read this passage from the book English Literature, its history and its significance for the English-speaking world, written in 1909 by William J. Long. The passage is, a child and a man were walking on the seashore. The child found a little shell and held it to his ear. He heard strange sounds coming from inside the shell. These sounds were melodious and soft. The child wondered. He considered these sounds from another world in the little shell. But the man explained to him that there was nothing strange about those sounds. The pearly cause of the shell simply caught a multitude of sounds too faint for human ears and filled the glimmering hollows with the murmur of innumerable echoes. It was not a new word, but only the unnoticed harmony of the old that had aroused the child's wonder. From this passage, we see that literature is just the art to discover the unnoticed world which has still to be discovered. It seeks beauty in the normal object and be presented before the man. So, literature in this regard requires a keen observation. In this regard, requires a keen observation on behalf of an artist, a poet, or a dramatist. He must discover what a common man cannot. A poet or a dramatist. He must discover what a common man cannot. Let's read some more from the same book, In the Pursuit of Defining Literature. If you define literature as everything in print, we then can include the study of medical profession in the 14th century, planetary motion in the early Middle Ages, or witchcraft in Old and New England, or book published about physical sciences, social sciences, or architecture, or whatever. This definition seems good, but what then become of oral literature? Those stories are poems which are transferred orally from generation to generation in a culture. So, again, we find that this definition is not encompassing every aspect of literature. Now, if we limit the definition of literature to great books, what are their subject? Those books which are notable for literary forms or expression, then the criterion is either aesthetic work alone or aesthetic plus general intellectual distinction. For example, in lyric poetry, drama and fiction, the greatest works are selected on aesthetic grounds. But in other books, their reputation or intellectual eminence together with aesthetic value is regarded. In this regard, style, composition, and general powers of presentation are the usual characteristic singled out. This is a common way of distinguishing or speaking of literature. Again, we find that this about great books are the greatest works. But is there any definition for a great book or the greatest works? Is there any distinction between the book which is greater, which is more valuable than the other? These questions should be answered. So, are the greatest works. But is there any definition for a great book or the greatest works? Is there any distinction between the book which is greater, which is more valuable than the other? These questions should be answered. Should be answered. Now we are going to state some definition of literature quoted by some famous writers. The first one here is by Caleb Thomas Winchester in his famous book Some Principle of Criticism, published in 1899. In the chapter 2 of this book at page 48, Winchester says, literature in general is a criticism of life or, perhaps better, an expression and interpretation of life. And the point to be noted here is that it is this power over emotion that makes literature an interpreter of life. The next definition here I am quoting is from Andrew Bennett and Nicholas Roy from their book An Introduction to Literature, Criticism and Theory, published in 1995, chapter 5, page 34. In the first line of the chapter 5, Andrew and Nicholas says, literature is uncanny. This short definition says that literature cannot be defined, means that we are not in position to grasp such a definition which encompasses all aspects of literature. Let's go to another definition, which is by Henry James. He says, it takes a great deal of history to produce a literature. This definition has been taken from Henry James' book, The European, published in 2013, and the quote has also been printed on the title page of this book. The next definition is from Gilbert K. Chesterton. According to him, literature is a luxury, fiction is a necessity. This was taken from The Dependent, published in 1909, chapter 2. The name of this chapter is A Defense of Penny Dreadfuls. According to this definition, literature is merely written from the pleasure and fun, to amuse the reader or the audience. According to Lewis, literature adds to reality. It does not simply describe it. It enriches the necessary competencies that daily life requires and provides, and in this aspect, it irrigates the desert that our lives have already become. Irrigates the desert that our lives have already become. Dear student, now let's read some famous quote about literature. With the help of this quote, we will be able to know more about literature and we will be able to distinguish between literature and non-literature materials. The first quote is from Ezra Pound. According to him, great literature is simply language charged with meaning to the utmost possible degree. What does he mean, a language charged with meaning? He explained that one can charge words with meaning mainly in three ways, which are called panoplia or imagism. Producing images in the literary work is called panoplia, or melopia, which is called melody, rhythm and music in the literary work is called melopia, or logopia. Using words in meaning more than one is called logopia, or using words in their connotational meaning is also logopia. The next quote about literature is from Oscar Wilde. According to him, literature always anticipates life. It does not copy it, but molds it to its purpose. The 19th century, as we know, it is largely an invention of Balzac. Balzac is the 19th century famous novel writer. Let's proceed to the next quote. Let's proceed to the next quote. The next quote here I am going to state is from Virginia Woolf. According to her, literature is strewn with the wreckage of those who have minded beyond reason the opinion of others. And another quote is from Alfred North Whitehead, who was a mathematician. According to him, it is in literature that the concrete outlook of humanity receives its expression. And according to E.M. Forster, what is wonderful about great literature is that it transforms the man who reads it towards the condition of the man who wrote. The man who wrote. Dear student, next we are going to discuss why we read literature. The reading of literature may have many purposes depending on the reader's choice and propensity of his mind. In Concise Companion to Literature, Pickering and Hopper mention the following four reasons of reading literature. Number one, reading for vicarious purpose, reading to learn, reading to confront experience, reading for aesthetic pleasure. So, reading for vicarious escape means literature can offer exciting narratives that can be read uncritically simply because they allow us to escape the problems and responsibility of our everyday lives and to participate, however, for a short period of time in a world of experience that differs radically from our own. It means that literature takes us to an imaginary world where we feel relaxed and free from all worries. Example, the spy or detective stories, science fiction, historical novels that we read only for the fun. School and college age students always read books for vicarious escape. School and college age students always read books for vicarious escape. Reading to learn. Dear student, literature offers the reader knowledge in the form of information that at the time is all the more fascinating because it is part of the author's recreated world. Literature broadens our knowledge of the world, and any literature that we read serves as a social document giving us insight into the laws, custom, institution, attitudes, and values of the age in which it was written or in which it was set. The next purpose of reading literature is reading to confront experiences. It is the most compelling aspect of literature. It is the relationship to human experience. Reading is an act of engagement and participation. It is also simultaneously an act of clarification and discovery. Literature allows us, as perhaps no other medium can, the chance to overcome the limitation of our own subjectivity and those limitations which are imposed by racial condition, age, social and economic condition. Dear student, the fourth purpose of reading literature is reading for aesthetic pleasure. Literature can also be read for the sheer aesthetic pleasure we take in good craftsmanship of any kind. For example, the praise given by John Keats, "A thing of beauty is a joy forever." This means that Well ordered and well chosen words are one of the few forms of immortality. Reading novels, drama, plays, and other fictional stories gives us immense pleasure, and we get relaxed and feel ourselves in a world which is fascinating and which soothes our senses. Plays and other fictional stories gives us immense pleasure, and we get relaxed and feel ourselves in a world which is fascinating and which soothes our senses, And all viewers, I have described briefly what is literature and what is its purpose of reading. In the next video, I will be with more details about literature, its types and genre, inshallah. Stay blessed. See you, inshallah, in the next video. Thank you for watching.